गुड आफ्टरनून एवरीवन। आज हमारा जो स्टडी का गेम है उस गेम का नाम इंग्लिश अल्फाबेट फोनिक साउंड है। आई होप आप सभी को हम लोगों के स्टडी गेम अच्छे लग रहे होंगे। थैंक यू, वेलकम। सो टुडे स्टडी गेम, लेट्स स्टार्ट इट।
Okay. Hello children, good afternoon.
गुड आफ्टरनून मैम।
So I will teach you subject English, chapter number 1, phonic sound. So are you ready everyone?
यस मैम।
Okay. So excuse me children, can I ask you some question?
यस मैम।
Yes baby doll, you. How many letters are there in English alphabet?
There are 26 letters in English alphabet.
Very good. Next you rockstar. How many consonants are there in English alphabet?
There are 21 consonants in English alphabet.
Yes. Then example.
B. C, D, F, G, H, J, K, L, M, N, P, Q, R, S, T, V, W, X, and Y, Z.
Very good. Okay. Next, baby doll. How many vowels are there in English alphabet?
There are 5 vowels in English alphabet. Then example A, E, I, O, U.
Very nice. Very good. So, take out your English book, chapter number 1, phonic sound. Read. आप सभी मेरे साथ read करेंगे. Okay?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. A. A says. A says. A. A says. A. A says ant.
A says and.
A says apple.
A says apple.
A says aeroplane.
A says aeroplane.
A says axe.
A says axe.
A says arrow.
A says arrow.
Okay. Yes. A says हम ए को जो साउंड होता है उसको कैसे रीड करते हैं? यस. गुड. नेक्स्ट है बी. लेटर
B.
यस. बी सेज ब. बी सेज
B.
यस. बी सेज बस.
B says bus. Bus.
बी सेज
Bus.
यस. बी सेज ब. बॉल.
B says ball.
बी सेज ब. बैग.
B says bag.
बी सेज ब. बैट.
B says bag.
बी सेज ब. बुक.
B says book.
ओके. बी का साउंड क्या है? ब. यस. नेक्स्ट है लेटर सी. सी सेज क. सी सेज
K.
सी सेज क. क. कार.
C says car.
सी सेज कैट.
C says cat.
सी सेज क. काऊ.
C says cow.
सी सेज क. कप.
C says cup.
सी सेज क. केक.
C says cake.
ओके. नेक्स्ट साउंड है हमारा लेटर डी. डी सेज
D.
यस. डी सेज ड. डी सेज ड. डॉल.
D says doll.
डी सेज ड. डॉग.
D says dog.
डी सेज ड. डोर.
D says door.
डी सेज ड. ड्रम.
D says drum.
डी सेज ड. डक.
D says duck.
ओके. डी का साउंड क्या है?
D.
यस. नेक्स्ट लेटर है हमारा ई. ई सेज वेरी गुड. ई सेज एग.
Egg.
ई सेज एलिफेंट.
E says elephant.
ई सेज इंजन.
E says engine.
ई सेज envelope.
E says
Sorry. Elbow.
E says elbow.
E says envelope.
E says envelope.
Yes. Very nice. E says yes.
Envelope.
E का साउंड था ए. नेक्स्ट लेटर है F. F says
F.
F says
F.
F says yes. जिसमें हमारी हवा के साथ निकलता है yes. F says flag.
F says flag.
Flag. F says fish.
F says fish.
F says flower.
F says flower.
F says finger.
F says finger.
F says fan.
F says fan.
Good. F का साउंड था हो गया. नेक्स्ट है लेटर G. G says
G.
yes. G says
G.
G. G says G. Gate.
G says G. Gate.
G says G. Grabs.
G says G. Grabs.
G says G. Girl.
G says G. Girl.
G says G. Grass.
G says G. Grass.
G says G. Goat.
G says G. Goat. Goat.
G says G. Glass.
G says G. Glass.
Yes. Next sound. Next letter है हमारा H.
Mummy.
H. H says
H.
yes. H का साउंड है H says horse.
H says H. Horse.
H says hand.
H says H. Hand.
H says hut.
H says hut. Hut.
H says hat.
H says H. Hat.
H says hammer.
H says H. Hammer.
Yes. Next sound है हमारा I. I says I. छोटा I. Right?
Yes, yes, yes.
I says I. Ink pot.
I says I. Ink pot.
I says I. India.
I says I. India.
I says I. Igloo.
I says I. Igloo.
I says I. Insect.
I says I. Insect.
Yes. E का साउंड I का साउंड था I. नेक्स्ट लेटर है हमारा J. नेक्स्ट साउंड है J. J says
J. J.
J says
J.
ja. Ja jeep.
J says J.
J says
J.
J says
J.
jeep.
J says J. Jeep.
J says J. Joker.
J says J. Joker.
J says J. Jocket.
J says J. Jocket.
J says J. Jug.
J says J. Jug.
J says J. Jelly.
J says J. Jelly.
ओके J का साउंड है J. नेक्स्ट लेटर है K. K says
K.
K says
K.
kite.
K says K. Kite.
K says king.
K says K. King.
K says kettle.
K says K. Kettle.
K says kangaroo.
K says K. Kangaroo.
K says key.
K says K. Key.
Yes. नेक्स्ट लेटर है हमारा L. So L का साउंड है
L.
L says
L.
lollipop.
Lollipop. Lollipop.
L says lion.
L says lion.
Lion. L says ladder.
L says ladder.
L says lock.
L says lock.
L says lamp.
L says lamp.
Yes. L says next letter है M. M says M says M says mango.
M says mango.
M says monkey.
M says monkey.
M says marble.
M says marble.
M says mat.
M says mat.
M says moon.
M says moon.
Yes. Next letter है हमारा N. So N says no.
No.
N says no. No. Nest.
N says no.
Nest. N says no. Net.
N says no. Nat.
N says no. Needle.
N says no. Needle.
N says no. Nut.
N says no. Nut.
N says no. Nib.
N says no. Nib.
Yes. Next letter है हमारा
Octopus.
O. O says
O says
octopus.
O says octopus.
O says orange.
O says orange.
O says organ.
O says organ.
O says ostrich.
O says ostrich.
O says ox.
O says ox.
Next letter है P.
P.
P says P says loaf.
P says loaf.
P says parrot.
P says parrot.
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 P says pencil.
P says pencil.
P says piano.
P says piano.
P says pen.
P says pen.
नेक्स्ट लेटर है क्यू. Q says Q.
Q says Q.
Q says
What?
Q says question mark.
Q says question mark. Question mark.
Q says Q.
Q says Q.
Quarter.
Q says Q. Quarter.
क्वार्टर का मतलब होता है हाफ, हाफ का और आधा, राइट? उसे क्वार्टर बोलते हैं. Q says Q. Queen.
Q says Q. Queen.
Q says Q. Quill.
Q says Q. Quill.
Q says Q. Quilt.
Q says Q. Quilt.
ओके, नेक्स्ट लेटर है R. R says
R.
R says
R.
R says rose.
R says rose.
R says rabbit.
R says rabbit.
R says rock. Rock. R says rock.
R says rope.
R says rocket.
R says rocket.
R says rainbow.
R says rainbow.
नेक्स्ट लेटर है S. S says S says S says socks.
S says socks.
S says sun.
S says sun.
S says spoon.
S says spoon.
S says soap.
S says soap.
S says scissor.
S says scissor.
नेक्स्ट लेटर है हमारा T. So T says
T.
yes. T says top.
T says top.
T says tiger.
T says tiger.
Tiger.
T says tiger.
T says tap.
T says tap.
T says table.
T says table.
T says toothbrush.
T says toothbrush.
Okay, next sound है U. U says yes. U says U says umbrella.
U says umbrella.
बड़ा वाला साउंड नहीं निकालना है आ ऐसा वाला नहीं okay
Umbrella.
yes. U says empire.
U says empire.
U says urn.
U says urn.
okay. नेक्स्ट लेटर है हमारा V.
V.
V says
V.
V says
V.
yes. नेक्स्ट लेटर है हमारा V. V says
V.
V says
V.
V says violin.
V says violin.
V says van.
V says van.
V says vegetable.
V says vegetable.
V says vulture.
V says vulture.
V says vase.
V says vase.
Okay, next letter है W. W says
W says
W says watch.
W says wash.
W says well.
W says well.
W says violet.
W says violet.
W says window.
W says window.
W says whistle.
W says whistle.
Okay, next letter है हमारा X. X says X. X says X. X says X-ray.
X says X-ray.
X says Xmas tree.
X says Xmas tree.
Xmas tree भी होता है. Next letter है हमारा Y. Y says y.
Y says
Yes. Y says yak.
Y says yak.
Y says yo-yo.
Y says yo-yo.
Y says yacht.
Y says
Yacht. Y says yellow.
Y says yellow.
Y says yuck.
Y says yuck.
Next letter है हमारा Z. Right? Z says z. Z says yes. Z says z. Zip.
Z says zip.
Z says zero.
Z says zero.
Z says zigzag.
Z says zigzag.
Z says zoo.
Z says zoo.
Z says zebra.
Z says zebra.
And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
आप सभी को हमारे स्टडी वाले गेम्स अच्छे लगते
अच्छे
हो
लगते हो
तो लाइक
like,
सब्सक्राइब
subscribe
एंड
and
शेयर
share
करें
करना
थैंक यू
ना
सो मच
भूलें।
ऑल
Thank